Markets went almost nowhere today, and this actually marks the fourth trading day in a row that we have been in this really tight range. This is basically a 30-point range on the S&P 500 between 6440 and the 6470 level, really coiling, and this just shows that market participants are still unclear on the potential next direction for the market. Taking a look at our data from the options market, the volume was pretty evenly distributed, so not much information that can be gleaned from there today as well. One of the things we mentioned, however, in yesterday's video was the 50-period EMA on the 15-minute chart. This is a little bit of a short-term indicator for trend change in the underlying stock price, and we do see that is starting to roll over. That's this red line on our chart. We do see the 50-period EMA starting to roll over, and that could be signaling a temporary pullback that is starting to form. So we'll have to keep our eyes out for that, especially as we are beginning a new monthly options expiration cycle. We talked a lot in our video yesterday about the potential for a larger trend change surrounding the monthly OPEX cycles, and so that could be what is happening here. Taking a look at our 0 DTE GEX flow chart, it was all about the 6450 level. That is this green line here. Basically the only strike in the SPX options chain that was seeing any action today, and that's essentially where we pinned 6449.15 down 0.01%. So almost no movement, like I mentioned, in the broader indices. We are still in a buy the dip environment, however, sitting in positive gamma exposure territory. So we only had a couple of dips into negative GEX and just barely so. This is essentially a neutral reading, and the S&P 500 has been in positive gamma exposure territory going back to the middle of April. Switching now to small caps, we'll take a look at IWM. Just a little bit more action than the rest of the markets, only up 0.37%, however, closing at 227.96. One of the things that we've been watching for is this consolidation over the last few trading sessions to see a breakout to the upside potentially. Gamma exposure is starting to build at higher strikes between the 230 and the 240 strike. And we think heading into this next FOMC meeting, the market is expecting the Fed to signal a start to rate cuts, and that could benefit small caps if that does take place. Fed Chairman Powell does have a speech scheduled on Friday, so it's going to be really interesting to see his language in terms of expectations into the end of 2025 and the rate cut cycle that could be beginning. We'll see if that has a positive impact for small caps as we approach that next FOMC meeting in September. But for now, the positive skew in the gamma exposure data and this consolidation just below the 230 strike looks to be a potential breakout of resistance if we can get above that level. So that's something we're going to be watching for closely, and we're considering to add an option strategy to take advantage of that possible move over the next couple of months. So that's something we're going to be discussing. By the way, you can track our trades in real time by becoming a member at geeksoffinance.com. I'll put a link in the description below for you guys to check that out. Next, let's take a look at Nvidia, up 0.86% today, closing at 182.01. Nvidia, like the rest of the market, in a larger consolidation pattern just above the 180 strike. This is probably the least volatile that we've seen Nvidia now for the last several months. And so I think this consolidation in the market overall is healthy, but especially for names like Nvidia that have rallied so hard since those April lows. If we take a look at the gamma exposure data and the options volume data, we can see gamma exposure is skewed to the upside, the largest gamma exposure concentration at the 185 strike, but there's plenty of interest at 190 and 200. Volume from 180 and above is strong, so market participants continue positioning for higher prices. And so we think this consolidation period could continue for a little bit. It could even widen out with a pullback back down to the 175, 170 zone like we saw at the beginning of August. But ultimately, we think this will resolve to the upside towards those higher gamma exposure concentrations. So we just started this next OPEX cycle, so some of these things may take a little bit of time to work out, but Nvidia is one of those names that we still think has more upside as the gamma exposure picture remains skewed positively. Next, let's take a look at Amazon. Amazon also basically flat on the day, 0.17%, closing at 231.43. We've talked about Amazon a number of times in our recent videos. Amazon continues to look constructive. The gamma exposure concentrations between 230 and 250. They remain strong even after the OPEX rollover. Volume today in the options market was strongest at the 230 strike, but we're seeing more volume coming in at 235 and 240 as well. So Amazon does look to be on the precipice of a breakout above this recent resistance between 230 and 235. And this is a name that we are actively trading. We actually locked in $1,345 profit on our short 220 puts that we had initiated about a week ago, and we rolled those out to the 235 put. So both of these trades were in the August 29th expiration. We closed out those 220 puts at 76 cents today. And if we just scroll up to our original entry, this was back, like I mentioned, just recently on August 12th, we had sold those 220 puts for $3.45. So the gamma exposure picture at the time, Amazon was trading at 222, and we were starting to see big volume and big GEX growing at these higher strikes all the way up to the 230 level. So flash forward back to today in the current setup, and we're just seeing the gamma exposure data continuing to move higher all the way up to the 250 strike now, and we remain above this 50-day EMA. 50-day EMA is sitting at 220.42, and so that was a really great support level and launching zone, combined with gamma exposure and the options volume that's signaling that higher prices were coming. So we've already seen over a 10-point move since our initial entry. We're going to continue collecting that premium. This is part of a larger wheel strategy that we have on a number of mega cap tech names that we're continuing to play in our portfolio. And I think Amazon is going to remain a really nice play for that wheel strategy based on the current setup. Next, let's take a look at Shopify. We haven't talked about Shop in a while. Today it was up 1.16%, closing at 143.11 after its recent earnings blowout, where price moved up nearly to that 160 level. It's been pulling back over the last week to week and a half, filling this gap left over from the earnings. However, the 50-day EMA is rapidly rising now, and so we think that price has a good shot of meeting this either this week or next week, somewhere around or just below this 140 level. We think that's going to make for a really nice risk reward entry point for a move into these higher gamma exposure concentrations. We see GEX concentrated up to the 160 strike, but we're even seeing it grow up to the 175 and 180 level as well. Not a ton of volume in the options market on a relative basis, so this is a little bit less liquid than a lot of the names that we look at in terms of options volume. However, the open interest does build up over time, and we're looking to structure an option strategy to take advantage of that move. It could be something as simple as an out-of-the-money call debit spread, or we could put on a premium collection strategy targeting some of these larger gamma exposure concentrations. So we'll be discussing this in our live stream as well as in our community Discord. And so if you're interested in joining us, we are running a limited time promotion. You can get $300 off our yearly portfolio manager tier subscription. Use code SUMMER2025 at checkout. We do have a few spots remaining, but we're going to be ending this promotion soon as the summer is wrapping up. So definitely take advantage of it while you can. Members get access to our gamma exposure dashboard, our option flow analytics tools, as well as our algorithmic trading strategies. And you'll also get access to the premium channels in our community Discord. As I mentioned, you can track our trades in real time, but we also have a ton of great traders in there sharing their own trade setups and strategies as well. So it's an awesome community. It's free to check out. I'll put links in the description below for all of that so you guys can check it out when you get a chance. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.